Hello, friends. My name is Host Eric, and I'm the host of Talking with Famous People. And today, we're crossing the nether realm into a land of shadow in which we explore magic and whether or not introverted intuition is magic. If you are somebody who currently casts a lot of spells, does that mean you are necessarily an introverted intuiter? Oh, that light bulb was burned out. That's why it's off, not because I have it turned off. All right, well, so it goes. The answer is most magic does involve introverted intuition, but that doesn't mean that all magic is necessarily derived from introverted intuition. And I would say that, well, it's possible that to the extent that, say, an NE-DOM, like myself, is to engage in reality shaping, which is to say meaning smithing, which is to say using narratives to compel changes in reality.
Narrativity.
There's my counter magician here who's coming to disrupt my spells. There was once a time when I was hoping she'd be like an apprentice or something, but I didn't realize she was actually a more powerful wizard determined to just destroy all of my magic. Hey, it's Sweaty Chandran. Hi, Sweaty Chandran. I really enjoyed all your texts in yesterday's live stream or whatever that was. I was just finished watching it. And it's like when I watch those live streams, I typically do watch them after I make them. Although usually I listen to them in the car, so I can't read the chat. But this one I watched in several sittings because it was like 2 hours or something. It took me several sittings to watch the whole thing, but I watched it and I see all the chat stuff that I miss when I'm doing it live. I actually end up missing quite a bit of it. And the thing is, it's not like I read it and choose to not respond to stuff that I don't respond to. Typically, I just don't even see it. I don't know. It's like my eyeballs don't catch everything or something. But anyway, today we're talking about the magic of introverted intuition. So do
you think that if somebody really, really wants to get their
magic
text read by you, they need to put a little emoji of boobies next to their message?
I don't
if you
think
have an emoji that has little boobies or something,
probably
put that next to your message and it'll be seen.
It's kind of like super chatting a little bit. I don't think they have a boobies emoji. We are trying to stay on topic today. Oh, Sweaty Chandran. No, we're not staying on topic today. This is a live stream. The topic is as the topic becomes. But we are beginning on topic, and the topic being introverted intuition. It's got a lot of reputation in the typological community as something kind of magical. INFJs have a lot of mystical mist around them for some reason. But the reality is, the reason that it seems that way is because there's a lot of kinds of systems in the world that are responsive to different kinds of impacts. For example, a system like a manufacturing system that converts trees into paper. It's a process where you push trees in and you get paper out. And the constraint on the process is how many trees you can push into the machine over a certain period of time. And there's a finite rate of processing that's the maximum, right? And that's a firm ceiling until you build a better, bigger machine that does things a little bit more efficiently. For systems that are like that are kind of semi-closed, you might say, and I can seem magic because now, and I'm not talking about actual physical manufacturing systems, although NITE would apply there. But let's talk about NIFE instead. Social systems are equivalently semi-closed. There's lots of finite rules and understandings of the individuals within a system that you can attain and be either more or less right in which singular actions are going to have substantive impact in the system. Other kinds of systems aren't subject to that, really. Like more open systems, the NI stuff will tend to get broken down by TI because NI relies on a synergistic element to a system that is where it is popped from. And I would say that the music is a perfect example where NI is God, you know. It's not enough to have a good idea. It's not enough to be clever. It's not enough to be snappy. It's not enough to do any of the various things that make a song good, or most of them. You have to do everything right. You have to get the levels right. You've got to get the mastering right. You've got to get everything right. And when you do, it's a league above anything less than that. That's a perfect example of NI magic. And there's no real way to break that down and explain it because you can't say, well, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 5. It doesn't. But that's what you've got there. You've got 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. You've got all these various elements, but the sum of them is greater than the total of the parts. So in that regard, it is kind of magic. And Freddie Chandran says, to be fair, INFJs can come across as pretty fucking perfect. They have all the cognitive functions in the right order that would lend one to seem like a very balanced person. Well, right. I mean, but the thing is, one thing to note about INFJs is less so than ISFJs, even for sure, even though they're the same tool function. INFJs are very unlikely to reveal things about themselves unintentionally. So, and the reason is because they've got that NI approach to social systems, which is the most universal way of knowing about social systems. And it gives them this quality of being one step ahead, quote unquote, socially. But that didn't tell us really anything about what's going on inside their heads. It's important to remember that with INFJs, because of that quality of them, whatever conclusions you may draw about them,
they're so mysterious,
based upon their behavior with you, are not going to be very descriptively accurate of their internals. And I think that their internals, it depends on the INFJ. You know, it's like some of them are more well-adjusted than others. I think they all have a big ontological struggle in life because of the way that their tool function and their third slot function operate. They need to optimize by being less effective, basically. Which is kind of fucked up, you know. Oh, you mean this totally effective and working FE shit that I'm pulling on everybody? That's not really how I want to be validated. I want to be validated for something more legitimate like my TI. So I have to be less effective to be more optimal. How fucked up is that, right? Of course, they have polar TEs, so it doesn't matter to them, really, I guess. The INFJs like being found out eventually. I know a suspected INFJ, and he gives people occasional glimpses into his mind on Facebook, only hints, though. He's just, what? At that point, he's playing to the most intuitive, probably. So INFJs will play on several levels. Their shit will say something that works on a straightforward level because they understand how other people understand better than I do, for example. I'm always over presuming that people understand me and what I'm saying better than necessarily some people do, you know? So
I don't understand you.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm referencing a bit. Is I need to finish putting this thing. I need to start putting and put up here another. I made one before, but I need to make a chart for her because she doesn't really want to. Because she's not an intuitive, she doesn't pick up whole language the way that intuitives do, which is to say, she doesn't just internalize all the labels and terms and just get them, right? So I need to put up a chart.
Can you imagine how difficult it was for me in school?
Um,
Like you've been with me now for 2 years, and even though I live, breathe, sleep, have sex with, eat dinner with, dream with, do everything with all of these terms, I still do not know what they mean. And I can catch on to what they mean just by if I listen to the conversation, I'm like, oh, okay. But I have to listen very closely. I just don't know them on the top of my head. I still don't. TI, I don't know.
TI is logic.
I don't know. Like I
Conditional
just know
logic.
that in our life we talk a crap ton about SE, and we talk a crap ton about what's moving our shit around.
Well, that's sort of. We talk a lot about TE too. Like, for example, let me give you an example of TE polar. And I don't want to be. I love these kind of stories. They make me laugh, but maybe Kimberly feels a little embarrassed by some of them. But in this instance, this morning I went out to use the coffee pot. Right now, there's a shelf above the coffee pot, which is okay because if it's where the coffee pot should be, you can still open the lid to pour the water in. It's not ideal because you can't open it all the way up because this shelf is above it, but it's still a good enough place that you decided to put it. Well, except on the shelf, she's chosen to place in the spot over the coffee maker this long container of napkins that makes it completely impossible to lift the lid on the coffee maker to pour water into it. So it's like it's similar to the let's put this in front of the light switches. That's polar TE.
Can I explain to you?
Sure.
I kind of decided that we would use bottled water now for our coffee because I think it tastes better and I think it's better on the maker. So you don't really have to lift that little lid. You just take the water bottles that I've put right next to it and you just kind of pour them in, and on the side you watch how much you've filled up.
So you just have to kind of get under there and lift it a little bit.
Just go like this. Just go like this. Like pour it in there. And
but you still have to lift the lid up, right?
You don't have to lift it up very much.
Right. You just have to lift it up a little bit and squeeze the water underneath the lid and pour the water. Right. Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is, I just moved the fucking napkin thing because I don't want to use.
This is what I do. I pull the coffee pot out.
Yeah, I know, but
Kim, it up, pour it in, and then put the coffee back.
Okay. All right. Fine. Kim, you're not okay. Okay, so let's get back on NI. NI will seem like magic to certain types, particularly those with NI, let's say 8th maybe, or no, I guess probably 4th it'll be most impressive to people in 4th. So but regardless, the whole reason it seems like magic is because when it's used properly, it attains that synergistic extra element. And there's no collapsing it down. It's not causally reducible, and it's not, otherwise it wouldn't be synergistic. And there's no disputing that synergism happens, like, you can just take any kind of mechanical system as an example. The coffee pot won't work if I take one piece out of it. It won't almost work. It depends. Some pieces maybe, but it won't partially work. It either works or it doesn't. Right? You just got to have all the pieces. So it's an interesting part of life. It's not something that people really discuss a lot, but most systems that we utilize in some regard, mechanical systems and shit like that, they've got that synergistic element that they work as a whole and don't work as anything other than a whole. But it's not true that everything's like that. So what's an example of a system that doesn't have that synergistic element? Well, like making a cocktail. You can make it with almost all alcohol and almost no mixer, or any range of combination of things, right? Now, you might say that there's a synergy that's attained if the drink is perfect or whatever, but that's not really the case. It's that's going to be a subjective conclusion regardless, and some people like it stronger, some people like it less strong. Yeah. The thing is, if you take a popular song like say Call Me Maybe, and you change one of the melodic lines somewhat and change a chord, it completely destroys the song. Oh, Geo Niggy Yugi, is that really you this time? Did you figure out your problem? Did you put on two-step verification? You should do that, Geo Niggy Yugi. Because yesterday you were telling me some things about yourself that were rather uncharacteristic of the way you normally talk to me. And I was beginning to think maybe there was some other person who was saying that. Someone literally made a whole other account just to be you? Wow, you're important. Kitty, you are not allowed up there. Come over here. Okay, this little kitty is quite an adventurer. Ow! Say hi to everybody. Wonder if you could change the lyrics to Call Me Maybe, but make them darker, macabre. The song would still be a hit due to the melody. Well, I think that's a good example of synergy, right? Part of the reason why Call Me Maybe is a hit is because of the paradoxical quality to the lyrics. Everything's this and then sort of the opposite. It's like, I want to see what the lyrics are actually. Let's look at the lyrics to Call Me Maybe. This is a very good NI example. Call Me Maybe is an NI triumph of epic proportions. I threw a wish in the well. So like that's already you're reversing, you're taking a trope that's well understood and known and flipping it in a way that makes it any interesting. It's the way that any and NI work together, right? So instead of saying like I threw a coin in a wishing well, you say I threw a wish in the well. Normally you're supposed to get the wish out of the well. Don't ask me, I'll never tell, which is also is what you'd expect, sort of. It references something you expect about wishes that you can't say anything about them or else they don't come true. I looked to you as it fell. So she says, don't ask me, I'll never tell. But then she indicates what it was about in the next line. Again, contradicting herself. And now you're in my way. Oh, wait, maybe I got that wrong. Maybe it's not that I'm looking to get with you. It's that you're in my way. I'd trade my soul for a wish, pennies and dimes for a kiss. Okay, now she's telling more about what it is that she wants. I wasn't looking for this, but now you're in my way, which again, the in my way thing suggests you want to get you out of my way, but that's not really what she's saying there. And then the next thing, your stare was holding, ripped jeans, skin was showing. This is just sort of like a throwaway paragraph. Hot night, wind was blowing. Where do you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me, maybe. It's hard to look right at you, baby, but here's my number, so call me, maybe. Hey, I just met you, this is great, right? So, okay. The way that it goes back and forth between hot and cold, right? That's what makes it successful on an NI level, ultimately, lyrically. Now, it probably could be successful still with slight changes to the lyrics, but I definitely think the lyrics played a role in its synergistic success. It's a great song, and in terms of the melody and chords and stuff. And then it also has that weird violin thing, or keyboard thing or whatever it is. It sounds like it's very simple, but it's hard to imagine coming up with it. It's interesting that a lot of tropes, sayings that we use in modern society are actually ancient sayings even from pagan times, when we changed over thousands of years. Yeah. Is Carly Rae Jepsen an ESFP? I don't know what Carly Rae Jepsen is. Well, Geo Niggy Yugi. So it was somebody who got an account with your name and put your same icon. Because did they have the same icon as you or not? I don't remember. If they don't have the same icon, then I could just remove that person if they come in again. Maybe her clone got drunk. They were definitely two different people. Or maybe she had a split personality moment. It would be more likely Euro Lamb. Okay, so back to the question of who's very cute. Oh, Carly Rae Jepsen. She's pretty cute. Not exactly my type, but she's pretty cute. INFPs go a bit off the rails when drinking. One of my INFP friends is, the wife of my ex-INFJ best friend, Corey. She has a drinking problem and has for years. And I don't know. She's a bit of a mess. Alcohol is a bad thing. Alcohol, for people who have a problem with it anyway, it's a bad thing. It's certainly not a bad thing for Kimberly. Kimberly drinks like how, the quintessential normal person drinks normally. Like she'll have one drink. Sometimes she'll have two drinks. And she'll have it maybe once a week.
It's usually always a negotiation.
Yeah. And if she doesn't like her drink, she won't finish it. Usually she'll try to finish it sort of as a general frugality measure, but she's after one or two drinks, she's I'm tipsy.
Let's go home.
Yeah, let's go home. I always encourage her to drink because there's zero chance of me successfully encouraging, bad behavior. She's just not the kind of person who drinks too much. So
I probably don't drink enough.
Yeah, it's fine for her. Whereas I can't drink because I know that I just don't have the kind of particularist self-restraint that's necessary. So yeah, Hero Lamb, I can't moderate, so I don't drink. That's exactly right, Hero Lamb. I can't moderate alcohol, so I don't drink. I can sort of moderate marijuana consumption. If I'm running low, I'd be like, all right, scoop a couple bowls here. But it doesn't matter anyway, because it's not really an intoxicant per se. Same thing with heroin. I don't really need to moderate my heroin consumption. I just Hey, it's Sporty Boss. I'm Super Chief and he's Sporty Boss. Jeebus. Her strong SI would have that intense bodily awareness of the self, though, which NPs lack. Right. She's very much more aware of how she's feeling physically than I am. And she's often more aware of how I'm feeling physically than I am. Yesterday I was so fucking dehydrated. And she tried to give me water on a couple occasions, and I didn't drink enough of it. And then I had terrible calf cramps during the night, and I couldn't sleep very well as a consequence. My calves would just be like, I have to get up and try to walk it off, and drink more water. And then I finally got myself hydrated, and then I had to get them to pee, and it was just like, it's I want to sleep 12 hours straight, but there's zero chance of that.
We're in like a very transitional weather, like, and went from cold, which we don't really drink as much water when it's cold, to a really hot day. It's probably like habit, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
For you.
Well, the other thing is, I frequently will, during the course of the night, switch from the bedroom to the living room couch. But right now, it smells like cat poop in the living room because the kittens have the litter box in there. So
we're box training.
Yeah. If it affects your minds and judgment, then it's a drug. Alcohol, women, especially women are probably the ultimate drug. Well, I mean, I'm not saying marijuana is not a drug. I'm saying it's not really an intoxicant per se. In the sense that it's certainly not a cumulative intoxicant if you're smoking it the way that, say, alcohol is. I asked this question earlier, but why are INFJs private? It can't be due to moisture or some fear of being hurt. They're private because they're trying to reveal. They're calculating how that which they reveal will impact the other person's metaphysical plate, their own perceptions. So, because they're calculating that on those terms all the time, they are very cautious about what they reveal. They understand that revelation primarily is instrumental to impacting the other person's perceptions.
I find it annoying.
Well,
it's like, I don't know. We have an experience with one INFJ that we spent months and months and months, and here we are, like, revealing our inner souls, with this relationship, and then it's like they just don't. It's like I always feel like it's kind of a give and take, I deal with that.
What are you talking about? Oh, okay.
It's like a give and take where, I'll share my little tenders and I'll share my little moments, and then you share yours. It's kind of like when you have an in-depth relationship with somebody, that's kind of how it is. It's a give and take thing, but they just kind of, my inner secrets are just, I've got a lot of baggage, and, but they don't ever like reveal it, and it's like.
Okay, so Shreddy Channer is asking the very interesting question, and the natural one to ask is, well, ISFJs aren't as private as INFJs, even though they have the same tool, FE. So what's the deal? Well, the deal is that ISFJs are using FE in a series of small frames, whereas INFJs are using FE in a bunch of instances within a single big frame. They have an awareness of the subframes, but they're calculating against the largest frame all the time. Question for Kimberly: do you view revealing or opening up as sharing FI, sharing your own feelings?
Yeah. Yeah, because usually when I'm opening up, I'm talking about my own personal experiences, so to relate.
So sharing your experiences is opening up, and sharing your experiences necessarily means sharing how you felt about those experiences, yes?
I usually will include that. If you're going to talk about it, you're eventually going to, or you eventually would open up about it, like.
Okay, Bob Dylan, he's hard to type. It's All Right Ma is one of the best songs lyrically. Seems like critiques of society. He really lambasts everyone in the world in that song. I see Bob Dylan as probably an INFJ who, but who fell off the he's got to be an INFJ. The way he sort of like withdrew from music because he could tell that he wasn't going to be able to affect the same kind of importance socially as he once did, and then gave other reasons for it and shit. That seems like a INFJ moving away from optimality. Geoniggy, I don't know if I can do that because it's not really a comment, it's a chat thing. I can remove the user, I can put the user on timeout or whatever else, and I will for sure. I didn't do it yesterday because I don't know why. I think I wasn't aware if it was your actual account. That's what it was. I thought maybe it was somebody who is taking over your actual account, and I didn't want to remove you because then that would be removing your actual account, and So, but now that I know it's not your actual account, I will definitely get rid of that person. I would say it's the logical moisture that doesn't seem logical to others. Well, okay, INTJs probably are the most private type and the most. They've got a lot of things going on underneath that include a general sense of anger at the way people don't do things right, and that include a certain kind of paranoia, it seems to me, about systems. They tend to believe in shadow government stuff, and I don't know. Bob Dylan also played games to hide things about himself, like he lied to reporters about his song's meanings. That's very INFJ as well. Do you think the different types of you opening up differently? What do you view opening up as, Eric? Just curious. I think opening up as anytime I'm non-defensively revealing insecurities. So I'll figure it out, Gina. I'll get rid of that person one way or the other and report them or whatever. Yeah, that's what I view it as. And I expect that my vulnerability will be responded to in certain ways, and if it's not, then I'll generally get upset at the person who's not responding appropriately and attack them in some way. It sounds like Kimberly recognizes this value of shared vulnerability, whereas INFJs may try to avoid that. I mean, I think that's a good observation, and I do think that ISFJs have probably more of a capacity to share vulnerability than INFJs, but it doesn't come naturally to ISFJs either, I don't think. ISFJs also want to, they use the tool function. By default, they're going to say, well, let's by default keep an eye on the
you want to be
perceptions.
I always want to make sure that it's safe with whom I'm talking about it too.
Okay, well, there's a good way to think about it too. I hadn't even really thought about that aspect of it, but
I mean, within my business, like I doing hair, it's just kind of like this thing where the minute someone sits down, that's what they just start spilling their guts. And me as a professional, I have to kind of keep that level of professionalism going. So I kind of gauge the conversation and how much I want them to know about me to maintain professionalism. But there is a point where some people need me to be completely vulnerable with them so that we can relate and they can relax. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if I reveal a little bit of my vulnerability, I guess I could seem a little more real to them. But there are people who I do not share. That's
a very FE understanding of revealing vulnerability.
In my business.
Yeah. The worst thing, says Hero Lamb, is opening up at the wrong time with the wrong people. It can be traumatic.
Yes, exactly my point.
I didn't. I mean, the thing is, I've not really had that experience much in life. So, by and large, I've never really been attacked for my vulnerabilities. Maybe a little bit as a kid out in school and shit, but not in my intimate relationships or my family relationships. So, I was when in my family, opening up simply meant being honest about being vulnerable in the sense of taking responsibility for things and saying I'm sorry and saying what you're sorry for, and everybody in my family did that. So, but I've experienced a certain amount of what I would say is negative response to vulnerability since then, and it doesn't seem to impact me hugely, except sort of to offend me. Like, that's wicked. And do you want someone to respond to vulnerability in kind, aka sharing things themselves, or just empathizing with you? Well, most of the time I share vulnerability, like here on the channel, is where I primarily actually share vulnerability. And what I want is simply to be perceived as more authentic because I am more authentic. So my FE is pretty, at this point, is getting more developed, primarily through an understanding of how it links to FI, that the posturing is, even if you do it really well, is necessarily going to be iffy FE.
Iffy.
Is Kimberly a therapist? No. Kimberly is a
therapist.
A hairapist, yes. She's a hairdresser, which is basically a therapist for these old women who come in and or at least a venti, right? She's a venti. She's like a bartender kind of, I think.
Yeah.
So I hear some of these stories, and these ladies come in, and my child is and my husband and my sister is such a bitch, and all that kind of stuff.
Reveal lots and lots and lots in that chair.
Yeah, Kimberly is an archive of secrets. Decades of clients sharing their
innermost
fears and dreams. Oh, little kitty, did you sleep on my lap? You're a cutie pie. Yes, you are. So Captain Knuckles thinks that Dylan is FI, not FE. Possibly. I've never seen an interview with the guy. I'm just sort of basing it on a couple things I know about him. I like that IDR Labs uses a couple of these interviews as proof for ISFP. Seems pretty lazy. Proof for who being an ISFP? Dylan? Okay. I don't know. I think it's an interesting question, but I want someone to respond with vulnerability and kind. I like my partner to show vulnerability to me. It makes me feel needed. Here's the thing about being an FI polar is you don't believe in your partner's emotions at all. So it's like, I would never think that Kimberly can be relied upon in area X because she loves me, for example, even though that might be the only logical answer to the question,
It is.
So, for example, it's the case that I should feel confident that Kimberly is not going to cheat on me because she loves me. But that's not why I'm confident about it. I'm confident about it because of the things I understand about Kimberly's nature, the way that she's behaved heretofore, and other externals, and that includes, like, one thing that an FI polar person wants is to be more useful to the other person than they are to you, which is kind of a fucked up way of being in general. I get to experience this a little bit with Becky, who's out usefuling me in my life, in our respective lives, by a large margin. And it's like, God damn it, I am totally beholden to this woman. it doesn't really bother me so much because I understand, like, I don't feel like I'm taking advantage of her, even though she's helping me and Kimberly a lot. And I mean, she's like hugely important in my general development and stuff. But I understand that my genuine benefit from it and genuine appreciation of that benefit is no doubt a fair amount of reward for Becky in and of itself. That she's not worried about monetary concerns at all, frankly. And I know this because I'm typically the same way. You know, I try to be a little bit more practical nowadays than I used to be about things, but I'm still basically that same kind of attitude that the FE is reward enough. Why is that? Well, it's ignoring an I. You know, I'm ignoring the magic of life where the shit converts to money. The thing is, I'm not an Enneagram 2, though. And I agree, it does sound like an Enneagram 2. I don't even have 2 in my tri-type because I'm not really after the helping of people. I'm after, that would suggest that to avoid shame, I'm helping people. That's not why I help people, or not why Becky helps people either. It's more like to attain the good aspects of FE. To avoid shame, I definitely go to 4. Well, I'm not embarrassed about because I'm an individual and fuck your social mores. And yeah. So, would ESFJ or ESFP be the least private type? Least private. I would suggest probably ENTP is the least private type. I mean, I don't feel very private at all. I have no, and the thing is, I have no respect, quote unquote, for privacy. Privacy arguments and appeals to privacy and stuff annoy me. I think privacy is just a way to either hide bad shit that's actually bad and you should be critiqued for, or unnecessarily hide shit that isn't bad and therefore you shouldn't feel like you have to hide. You know? But that's just my perspective on it. I get that introverts don't feel that way at all. Opening up to my family has always turned into blaming me. You should have done this. They voiced my negative thoughts, so I just stopped doing it, I guess. A lot of people have this experience, and that's something I've learned, is that my experience is not the regular normal for everybody kind of thing. Thanks, Jim Barton, for commenting on my thumbnail. I appreciate that. I looked at that thumbnail. I thought, oh, that's a pretty funny one. That's a pretty good one. Yeah, the thing is, and one's upbringing has a massive impact on how one enters the world, and relationships after childhood. My weird experience of being raised by these parents who were just eminently fair and loving and genuinely wanted the best for me, were well positioned to help me, being my dual and my benefactor type. You know, because I've got ISFJ mom was my dual. And I spent my childhood, you know, waking up early and sitting in the living room and sharing a cup of French cafe coffee, getting all this SI shit and chatting with my mom and just enjoying time together in the morning and stuff, and being affirmed by her continually. And then my dad going, oh, you know, here's some TE shit, Eric. You really gotta, son. It was a little bit like, but it benefited me a great deal because he's my benefactor type and I'm his beneficiary. And then they just were both also really, I guess, healthy people. They just, you know, a lot of love and almost no unresolved unfairness. Sometimes my dad would be unfair, yell or shit. He'd come up to me an hour later or something and apologize and explain why he was apologizing. and what he did that was wrong. And when I had dispute with them, they'd hear me out, and if I was right, they'd concede some things or whatever. And if I was wrong, they wouldn't. So it was like perfect for my cognitive function stack. I can say NI polar does result in being very stubborn and one-sided. It's impossible to get them off what they see as the truth. That's true. My dad can be frustrating. Peter Dennis says, my dad is NI polar. My dad had the idea I was doing drugs. I wasn't. He said of an intervention-like thing. No matter what I said, he wouldn't believe me, even if I said, drug test me, take my blood. I have kind of a similar story, Peter Dennis. One time my dad found, when I was in high school, like maybe a sophomore or something, he found this cigarette pack cellophane in our driveway. Who knows how it got there? He was absolutely fucking convinced I was smoking. I wasn't fucking smoking. I don't have it. There's no. He looked around for shit and just like, Dad, he wouldn't believe me. And I don't remember if that ever even got resolved. If he ever said he did believe me, but he accepted that he couldn't prove it. And that's the sort of fairness I would get. He conceded that he couldn't prove it. I was like, well, not only can't you prove it, it's not true. Of course, within like a couple of years, I started smoking. But at the time, I wasn't. Yeah, they're great. I right now I'm spending a lot of time taking care of my mom, who's like a 4-year-old or something, or a 3-year-old basically. And it's emotionally heavy. It's also satisfying in the sense that I get to give back to her caregiving that she gave to me so well when I was growing up. But I don't like having to engage my FI that much. It makes me feel this complicated shit that I can't even begin to parse out with my feelings. I just gotta sit there and sort of feel it and live with it. I used to experience a lot more what I called existential terror, where I feel this sense of panic over the past having disappeared when I wasn't paying attention, like the way things are. Because when you're 8 years old or something, and you're perfectly comfortable in the back of your parents' car and everything's just as it is, and it's always going to be that way. And as far as you could tell, you're just in this permanent state of being 8 and sleeping in the back of the parents' car on the way home from Mammoth, and then waking up sort of around when you get to the freeway and being excited to see your friends when you get home and shit like that. And this person lives at this house, this person lives at that house, and this person lives over there on that block. And you got this mental map of everybody around. And what you don't realize is that's this blip of a couple of years. And then things start to change, but you're not paying attention to the changing because you're in an EDOM. And so then all of a sudden you're like,
I'll be back.
Late 20s. Yeah, okay. Where you going?
To go take this little guy to the...
Oh, he's still alive? Can you bring me back a pack of cigarettes? Thanks. I get to this thing where it's like, oh my God, I went back to the neighborhood and nobody's left really. Like these families have moved away and what happened? That's not where I grew up. My parents are getting old. Well, now I don't really experience that existential terror anymore because I'm giving so much attention to linking back to my past by interacting with my parents so much that I feel a sense of wholeness in that connection to my SI that I didn't used to experience. And I think it's successfully sort of cured my existential terror. No, it's not that. Let's see here. It's just that when you are aware of your moisture, it means you're experiencing embarrassing shit on a consistent basis. Really? I don't understand what you mean by that. I don't feel embarrassed by my moisture. I feel like it's a little kid. I feel like my FI is a little kid that it's all the youngest and least aware parts of myself are FI. It's like I've tried to, the thing is the attachment style thing is hugely important. So because I came from a family that I have a very secure attachment style. I presume everybody else is going to have a secure attachment style. Kimberly did not come from that kind of background. She came from a horrible family where, they took turns ganging up on one member and shit. And, yeah, maybe ESTPs are even less private, but, I don't know. I think we're both equivalently private. And so that's something Kimberly and I've had to work through. Something that Becky was able to fix because she understood what it was and recognized it for what it was. Because here's the thing. If you are in a relationship and you go to like a relationship therapist, what's going to happen? The relationship therapist is going to try to be fair and to assume that it's a he said, she said kind of a thing where there's two sides to the story and both sides have equal validity and merit, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is if one of the parties has an insecure attachment style, then they're going to be demonstrating unhealthy and harmful and bad behaviors. And the other party with the secure attachment style is not. So that makes it really challenging to bridge the gap between those two parties because no good therapist is going to come in and say, you're the problem and this person's not. But at the same time, no successful therapist is going to come in and say, you guys are both the problem when only one person really is. It makes it almost untenable. And Kimberly and I found no success in talking to anybody until we talked to Becky. In fact, everybody we talked to prior to Becky made things worse by doing exactly what I said, presuming that this is just a relationship thing where two people are being stubborn with each other or something. But in reality, an insecure attachment style correlates with some demonstrating the behaviors that one grew up in the environment of. And it was, I didn't understand what I was dealing with at first. And so I did what I always do. I try to be objectively self-critical and sort of internalize the critiques and respect them for having legitimacy and change where I need to change and blah, blah, blah. And over time, I started to realize, oh, this is brutal. This is like abusive, this relationship. I can't take this shit. And one thing at a time, I sort of started to extinguish some of the worst of the behaviors until, but we still didn't really resolve things until Becky got in the mix and was like, okay. Do you think the average young ENTP can be socially awkward and come off as slightly autistic? Well, I mean, it depends what your understanding of autistic is. Socially awkward for sure. Autistic, I mean, the term's thrown around to mean all kinds of different things. Can't a good therapist just pinpoint behaviors that perpetuate the insecure process so both partners become more aware of it? Well, here's the thing, Shannon. It depends on the couple and everything. You got to remember that Kimberly and I are a TIFE couple. She's FETI, I'm TIFE. So it's critically important for this therapy process, for if it to work for me and Kimberly, for me to feel as though justice has been attained, that there's some fairness. I've been subjected to a lot of fucking shitty ass narratives because number one, she thinks what really counts is action, not words, whereas it's the opposite for me. And number two, she's got these entrenched bad behavior responses and abandonment fear. It's all driven by abandonment fear. It's like she's habituated to shitting on the thing that she fears is going to fall apart, right? As a way of protecting herself. And that happens to be me. So the reality is then what needed to happen in the conversation with me and Kimberly is I needed Kimberly to concede on all my points, basically agree with me that this is what was happening, take ownership of the reality, and then move on from there. It was almost impossible to get her to agree with me on the fundamental frame here, which is, look, to the extent that we had these problems in the past, it was because you were pulling this bullshit. You were behaving abusively, and it's unacceptable. And this is why you were behaving abusively. And I'm not going to blame you or anything for it, but you've got to take ownership of it, or else I can't get past it, right? Narratively, I can't get past it unless we're on the same page about this shit. So a good therapist is going to attain that outcome for me, and going to attain that outcome for her, whether she thinks she wants it or not. Now, the key thing to do, what ended up happening, the way Becky was able to successfully get that message across, was walking Kimberly through some exercises where Kimberly put herself in my shoes, use her 6-slot countervalued FI, just as the way I got this thing solved ultimately was using my TE. I don't care whether IFS is TI sound or not. I just looking for whatever works. But see, the key thing is FI types seek fairness in therapy, you say. Well, I think what FI types seek is to feel as though things were fair. What I'm looking for is a resolution narratively about how we both will frame and talk about certain things from the past. And I need that because those certain things from the past were establishing negative narratives about me that were ontological critiques, not behavioral. But so there needs to be a reconciliation of that. It's insufficient for her to, say, make behavioral affirmations while making ontological critiques, because ontological critiques are permanent and behavioral affirmations are temporary. So she needs to negate those ontological critiques, replace them with ontological affirmations, and then negate or affirm behavior according to its justifications. And that's the frame of interaction I need. So what I'm saying is I need a therapist to do something dramatically impressive, which is to change the other person's fundamental frame of interaction. And Becky fucking did it. She also fixed me too. It's like I had my own FI shit that I had to walk through with my own IFS. And that stuff is something that it's like right there, I know I'm at my FI because I don't want to share that. I don't want to talk about that. So, I mean, I want to reference it, but I don't want to go into the details. So that's privacy because it's FI shit. Not all FI shit I want to keep private though. So that's an interesting notion. An interesting thing to note as well, that FI doesn't necessarily correlate with privacy. I think what an FI necessarily correlates with is not wanting to, feeling any need to, or interest in justifying. If I don't want to justify, if I don't want to use words to explain why I'm correct about something, I don't want to talk about it, or I want you to just agree without discussion or something like that. That is definitely FI for me. And there are very few things that are like that in life. One of the bad behaviors that Kimberly has engaged in because of her own personal experience, and remember, I'm not saying she's doing this shit intentionally or did it intentionally or whatever, but I'm trying to rewrite my past, saying that, trying to tell stories about how my parents treated each other and treated me that are projections of her own past onto my family. And that really upset me. And I just said, basically, I don't want you to try to rewrite my past. I don't like the way you talk about my family, and I don't want to justify it or explain it. I want you to not talk any shit at all, ever. Can you explain ontological arguments like you would a 5-year-old? So basically, let's say I'm teaching first grade. Look, Johnny, you can tell Bobby that you don't like the way he says your name when he's joking like that. But you can't say that he's a bad person because he does that, or that he's a mean person. yes, Bobby said something mean, and he shouldn't have done that. That doesn't mean he's a mean person. That's an ontological critique, because you're a mean person. You said something mean is a behavioral critique. And good communication between people in a relationship, or just in any kind of relationship, friendship, but especially an intimate relationship, they don't make ontological critiques. Criticism kills love, even if it's correct to a certain extent. But behavioral criticism doesn't kill love if it's correct. So that is to say, if your behavior hurts me in some fashion, I should be able to critique it and have that critique taken seriously on the grounds that it hurts me, not on the grounds that it is justified that it hurts me. So let's say I like to make jokes about Kimberly's big ass or something, and she said at some point, "Hey, you know what? I don't like you making jokes about my butt like that. It hurts my feelings." Then I need to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I will not do that anymore for sure. I didn't realize that, and I apologize," or something like that. Because in that instance, I have a choice. Am I going to take seriously her experience of being hurt, or am I going to not take it seriously and try to tell her that her experience of being hurt doesn't matter? And Becky had an interesting definition of gaslighting, which I normally define as convincing somebody else that there's something wrong with them when there's not, or something like that. But she defined it as telling somebody that their experience of being hurt by you doesn't matter. And so that's so yeah. Let me catch up with the chat here. I think I'm falling behind and missing stuff. Let's find out. Approaching people in that way probably won't work out. Effie things out. If you want to go about thinking that way, you can, but don't be surprised the other person doesn't like you. I'm speaking more like if you were roommates with an INFP, to be clear. Yeah, I've lived with an INFP before. And the funny thing is, in that instance in China, I was his boss, but he's still my supervisor type. But he and I didn't ultimately get along that well because, like, one day I came home and he fucking freaked out because I had been smoking out on the patio, which is where I was supposed to smoke, but near the clean clothes he had hung out to dry. He was so furious because they got some cigarette smoke smell on them or something. I'm like, well, look, I'm smoking outside. What the fuck? And it's like it was constantly raining when we first got there too. So it wasn't like there was a good place to smoke. So the only covered outside place to smoke. Anyway, that's my complaint about that INFP I live with. That INFP, by the way, you could see him yourself in a couple of movies, including Fletch. He was in Fletch. He's the guy jogging. I forget what his name is. The character's name. Anyway, yeah. He's also, I think, in Rain Man. In a couple of big feature films as a bit player. His name is Ralph. What's his last name? Ralph. I don't remember what his last name is. So anyway, what's the best way for an ISFJ female and INTP male to communicate? I mean, it's a pretty close match to the duality relationship that you'd like to see, but I would say the best way is, I mean, it's going to require things to be both resonant on TI and FE levels. So the INTP is going to need to make more of an effort to prepare their TI specifically for an FE heavy person. So they're going to need to. What, kitty? Ow! 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 Fucking god damn it! Get away! Fucking cat scratched the fuck out of me. Okay, Power Red Bull. Listen, here's the thing, Freddie Chandran. I want to talk about this a little bit. There are some NT types or ST types or whatever you want to call them, depending on people around this channel who are somewhat withering and caustic in their wit. And an easy target is introverted feeling and FI people. So while I may be in general making a concerted effort and probably successfully trying to bridge gaps between FI and TI, I totally want to give the hearty thumbs up to my brethren who are in a stage of expression that still uses middle fingers a little more frequently than I do anymore. So, I feel you INFPs, but I feel you Power Red Bull. I'll never going to be that particularly concerned. Like I'm never going to be too overly concerned with moisture. I continue to try to humidify. I want a humid environment, but I don't want mold to grow. Let's see. I wanted to answer or respond to this. 2 days. That's what I want to respond to. Susie. Kitty, you get the fuck off of my computer. What happened? Why did it make that thing there? Oh. Did it reset something? Oh, good. Sinjin's here. Whew. Taylor. Ha. Sup. Yeah, Susie's going to come over to our house and hang out with us and play with us. We're going to play live stream. We're going to play Sash Party. We're going to play fishing. We're going to play lots of things. Okay. Okay, well that seems hypocritical, but at the same time, okay, so I want to continue on this thing here. So Freddie Chandran says, yeah, I really appreciate your efforts, Eric, but the point is that FI types wouldn't stand for other FI types, shit-talking TI types, so it seems hypocritical. That's true, but TI types wouldn't tolerate other TI types making FI arguments. So that's the equivalent, I guess. I don't know. Hey, Hero Lamb, we discussed this. Your obsession with whale semen. This is not a whale semen themed live stream, okay? Not every conversation has to be about whale cum. I'm sick of it. God. It's like every time fucking Hero Lamb comes around, it's nonstop whale cum. He put a Twitter photo of himself bathing in a giant barrel of whale semen. With the caption, "Oh, the delicious spermaceti." Can you continue talking about TI interaction with FE dominant types, INTP and ISFJ? Well, INTP and ESFJ would be duals, and then that would work out perfectly because it's like I said the other live stream. You are a baby in one and a big kid now in the other. That's your fourth and your third. I'm a baby in my fourth, so I want the SI mom. I want SI mom to come feed me, give me food, tell me to go to the bathroom, tell me to take a shower. But I'm a big kid with FE. I don't want to have her hold my FE hand too much. The challenge for INTP and ISFJ is that ISFJ wants to baby INTP with the SI, but INTP is a big kid now with SI, and they want to do it themselves. And INTP wants to be a baby with FE, but the ISFJ is going to be like, okay, you're a big kid now with FE. So that's where the duality thing breaks apart with the two I's. Which just proves your point about how FETI seems to shit on FITE way more. Okay, but see, that assumes that the argumentation, it assumes that your frame is valid and ours isn't, right? So you're saying, look, you're shitting on attachment as a way of evaluating things because it doesn't resonate on your frame of detached evaluation. But you're evaluating the FI critique on your own frame of equal legitimacy by FI rather than on within our frame of legitimacy argumentationally. So it's the same thing both directions. Whale cum is great for the skin. That's true. I used to have the driest, most ashy knees until I discovered my friend here, Willie, the killer whale. And, well, he and I became a little bit more than friends. He and I became special friends with whale cum benefits. And so after learning how to jack off a whale, now I've got an endless supply of skincare product. Scrooty, that's Srutty Chandran, not Scrooty. Okay. Scrooty would be a bad name. I wouldn't want to be named Scrooty anything. Or Scroty would be even worse. You know, you wouldn't want to be named Scrotum as your first name. I wouldn't anyway. Can you explain how inferior FE affects INTPs? Well, inferior FE, it makes INTPs much more cautious in general than INTPs. So INTPs have at least 10 times more good jokes than they get out, at least in the company of an ENTP, because they double check everything. By the time they're done double checking it, ENTPs moved on to the next thing, and the joke is no longer appropriate contextually. So that's part of the problem with SE Polar too. I'm likely to get out all 10 of my good jokes, plus one or two stinkers, because I'd rather err on the side of one or two stinkers than missing out on one of my good jokes. So that's the difference. SE Polar people, they'd rather miss out on the good joke than make the mistake, especially with SI third slot. They want that SI memory of the exchange to be positive, to be free from blemishes, to be nice and shiny. Do whales have penises? Only the boy whales. Only the boy whales. They use, or how do they mate? Okay, so when a boy whale and a girl whale are very, very much in love here at Lamb, they start to wrestle. And they wrestle when the whale puts his up the lady whale's and that's where the babies come from. There's a stork involved somewhere too. I'm not sure what his role is. I think he gives the girl anal or something. I'm not sure. Now, one of the points I wanted to make is that some TI types, not all, just seem to be just scrambling for argumentation to satisfy their unconscious desire to feel superior in their FI. I would suggest it's probably more likely to satisfy their desire to get the FE validation. You know, in other words, to believe as though they've established competence in the eyes of the other that requires a certain kind of respect, at least on the vectors that matter to them. Now, that kind of FE desire may be itself a form of FI in a way. Like, you know, I know my FI is satisfied when I feel as though, well, you know, it's satisfied by Freddie Chandran sort of saying, you're doing a good job with your polar FI. Like that kind of shit satisfies me. Is that an FI desire to whatever? It's FE. I mean, to say it's an FI thing is kind of like to try to blur unacceptably the lines between FI and FE, I think, maybe. But I don't know. It's a challenging topic for me. You are annoying the shit out of me, little kitty. Frankly, I'm not going to lie to you. You need to go back inside with your brother. How to distinguish between the fourth and the seventh influence? Well, fourth, you're seeking it. Seventh, it's confusing. So it's like like I said, I'm seeking SI, right? I want someone to be my mommy in SI and to feed me and blah, blah, blah. I don't want someone to be my mommy in FI. That would be terrible. Now, Eric, stop what you're doing and remember what's important. What do you feel? What are you attached to? Put yourself in other people's shoes. That's just running counter to my nature. So that's the big difference is what your relationship is with it. Now, no, young ENTPs, if you were to ask them, probably true of ENFPs as well. I'm not sure about that, but if you were to ask them about SI and what do you want in your relationship? Do you want mommy to take care of your SI? They're probably going to say no, they don't want that. They're looking for somebody who's an intuitive that they can talk to about ideas, because they've not experienced it. But I grew up with duality in my family, my mother, as I said. So I sort of was always looking for mom again as soon as I left the family without really being aware of it. And the fact is that when you get in a duality, when you get with an ISFJ and you're an ENTP, you learn why it's the right relationship in no uncertain terms. And one of the things you learn is that you cannot trust your own opinion about what's going to be what you want in a relationship at all, beyond just you. If you have a secure attachment style, you can trust your own feelings to guide you about what's right and wrong in a relationship, which is something I took a year to learn, at least with Kimberly, is that I needed to use my FI to a certain extent, trust my own feelings. This is not okay, what she's saying and doing. Or saying, really. She didn't really do anything. She just said a bunch of horrible things, If I could be any type for a day, which would I be? I'd probably be like a 17-year-old Japanese schoolgirl ESFP. That'd be fun. That'd be very different than my normal experience. That'd be about as far from me as I could get. So I'd probably learn the most by being that. I've never been a Japanese schoolgirl nor an ISFP. It'd be brand new for me. Plus I could go, like that. It's due to negative sensor stereotypes. My mom's an ISFJ and she's so smart and very introspective and fascinated by ideas and concepts. My mom was really smart too, and she wrote this. I read it on a video one time. She wrote this beautiful story from her childhood of getting stung by a scorpion, and it was a great short story. No, I haven't ever been Joey Jojo Shabadoo. Excellent question. Joey Jojo Shabadoo asks, in all your transracial experience, which I've had a lot of transracial experiences, I've said I've transferred between different races many, many times. I've been Japanese many times, but here's the problem, Joey Jojo Shabadoo. I am transgender as well, but I only go from manly to super manly and back again. So I've never been a girl before, is why. And I am transageal, but for the last, I don't know, I guess year and a half or so, I've stuck entirely within the adult range from 18 to 99, TI and INFJ versus INFP. INFJ is more, I can tell the difference between front stack medium and back stack medium. There's a distinction there. It's like INFPs go, let's see. You said her mother's mother. Oh, I guess that's her husband. Or as INFJs go. Okay, wait. One more time. Husband. Like INFPs, they go, oh, we're doing that thing. Oh, yeah, I guess I can do that. Whatever, it doesn't matter really. That's the thing that I can use to justify my feelings sometimes. So they've got a much more casual approach towards the TI, but they might both get the same answer, and about the same amount of time. It's equivalent strength, I guess you'd say. I used to like TINE and brainstorming, discussing with my INTP sister, and it was never about any of us being right. We just like to explore thoughts and see how far we could go. Right, TINE, it sees rightness and wrongness as being statuses within a given match or hand. In this conversation, we're defining this as that and that and this. So this is right and that's wrong and blah blah blah. And then the next conversation, all those previous statuses are scrapped. It's a brand new hand. So, in this conversation, we're defining meow. So that's why I think that Power Red Bull means it was never about any of us being right. He means it's not, you don't get to keep that status of right, and the status of right isn't afforded to you or the other person or anything. It's about the words being said. Dealing with FI hollowness. Just get an FI user? No. You do not want to get an FI user with sauce. You need to get an INFJ. The reason why you get an INFJ is because your FI hollowness needs to be resolved with a NI universality that my FI hollowness doesn't. So an ISFJ provides me a solution to my FI hollowness by grounding me through my SI. But you need to be grounded through your NI because you're already grounded, quote unquote, through your SE. SE being a physical action function is grounding implicitly. It makes things concrete. It returns you always back to reality and away from the abstract world. To ground that reality, that concretization nature of the ESP needs to develop or find a dual who provides introverted intuition, which is all about timing and taking one action to accomplish a bunch of things rather than, the ultimate NI stone throw takes one stone, spins it around, lets it go, and kills every single bird in the world. So it's not just one stone killing two birds. It's one stone creates an epic, universal bird holocaust. Now that's magic, right? Of course, there's no NI that can manage that big of a frame. So no matter how, no matter how whatever, you can't successfully kill all the birds. Have you ever been French? Oh, I've been French Canadian. I think French isn't a race. I think French might just be a nationality. I think the race might be French Canadian minus the Canadian, which is a little bit different. Is it common for INTPs to suppress their TI in social settings due to FE insecurities? I would say they're not suppressing the TI. They're suppressing their NE. Their NE is what spits shit out, right? The TI doesn't need to be suppressed. My TI often occurs in the car when I'm not talking to anybody. I'm thinking about shit that I'm going to be talking about in an upcoming video. I'm not really fully aware that I'm going to be talking about it in that sense. I'm not planning or anything, but it's just me and my nature going around in the car, driving around or walking around and just thinking like, oh, well, what if this is oh no, that doesn't make any sense because, oh, that's a good idea. I just do that shit all the time, FE equals fucking exciting. I like that philosophical thinker. That's what it stands for. Let's see here. I've been French mostly due to being stereotypically middle-aged American and female. That does typically make you French. I notice my NE gets suppressed when I feel uncomfortable in social settings. I notice I become a boring robot when I feel comfortable. I use NE way more. Yeah, okay, there you go. You must be an INTP or Red Bull. I always thought you were an INTP, but I guess you must be an INTP. I guess I never really knew one way or the other. That's Kimberly talking to one of the animals. I'm skeptical that INFPs require ESTJs, though, although I'm not familiar with the ESTJs. Personally, I prefer ENTPs or INTJs over them. The thing about duality relationships is they won't seem, in general, to be appealing when described in the abstract to any type, frankly. I mean, maybe a couple of them, but like... Are you Daddy? Yeah, like, this kitty will not stop bothering me right now. He needs to go on with his brother. Thank you, darling.
You need to just realize that you have 5 cats. It makes it all that much cuter.
The thing is this. If you were to get with an ESTJ and you went into the relationship with cognitive function knowledge, then you could go in there and realize my partner has polar NI and my partner has got 8th slot instrumental FE. So,
or you could go in and say, my partner is host Eric. Oh my God, please help me.
Well, honestly, dude, you don't know any more than I do. Presupposing that you do is not a good way to approach people. If you're talking to me, what am I presupposing? Okay, maybe it was a little presumptuous here, Lamb, to presuppose that you wanted my scrotum on your face. But you shouldn't blame me for putting it there. I mean, it seemed like a logical conclusion. Who doesn't want my scrotum on their face?
I do.
Kimberly does, therefore everybody must. Is the 6th function really strong, as people say? It's not strong, it's demonstrative. Which means it's actually weak. But also improvable. So the thing is, my TE is it's demonstrative, which means basically it's always applied to other people's problems, not my own. Solvency is not a frame that I'm used to using. Like, well, is this going to solve the problem? I'm going to be like, well, I don't care if it's going to solve the problem. It needs to be correct. You need to agree with this thing or whatever. Semi-dual relationships are much more appealing to both sides. They might seem that way at first. And the thing is, when you're talking about what you think you want in a relationship, you're necessarily going to be talking about yourself more than you ought to.
Well,
you're going to think go ahead.
It's a matter of not what you want, but kind of what you need.
Right. And so when you're talking about what you think you want in a relationship before you get in one, you are going to be describing yourself more than you should. You're going to be less understanding that you need a compliment than a match. And I believe that people do need a compliment in their life instead of a match. Like, I don't need another intuitive. I don't need another thinker. I need another extrovert. I need an intuitive, sensing feeler. And at the same time, even though I need a compliment like that, it's not complimentary if I get the opposite functions. Those things don't complement each other. They're in conflict with each other. The relationship between those things is exclusive. So, yeah. How does one value their own sixth function? My experience with my sixth function is that I value the opportunity to get FE with it. It should serve FE. So when Kimberly has a problem and I can solve it and make her happy and she can use her demonstrative FI to reveal to me that she's happy, I feel good and like I've accomplished something. Plus, I actually have accomplished something because normally I might not get through that whole task. My SE is serving my NE normally. But with Kimberly in the mix, needing me to solve problems allows me to have my SE and my TE both in the mix, serving my FE, which I know is going to get from Kimberly demonstrative FI as a result. So she's just demonstrating to me, I'm happy. She's not actually happy necessarily. She may or may not be or whatever. Probably is. But the important thing is that she's putting it out there. It's for my benefit, not for her own. It's communicative, not really expressive of some authenticity. And that means that both of us are naturally operating in dynamics that facilitate the inclusion of the other person's functions. Normally, my TE and my SE and my NE and everything else don't really work in conjunction with each other. But because Kimberly's providing the NE aspect of it, sort of, or there's not really a lot of NE involved, it allows me to put NE aside and actually operate in frames that I normally wouldn't find implicitly adequate for my attention because of the added FE outcomes. What is the best method to type someone? Well, Julia Hagen, the best method to type someone is to watch a couple of my typing session demo videos where I ask a bunch of questions, and that's basically the best way to type someone. I have a hard time understanding what FI is, Lemma. Personalized moral systems, says Julie Hagen. Well, Julia Hagen, let me tell you the answer to that question. Here you go. Ready? FI is not a personalized moral system. FI is the moisture in your heart. FI is not an idea that you think, no. FI is kind of like what's in your heart. FI is putting yourself in another person's shoes, saying, hey, it's okay, you bullied me, dude, because I know you had a rough experience yourself, and you feel sorrow in the tenderness of your dampness. And that's what FI is. What I want you to do, Julia Hagen, I want you to look down, find the most wriggling bit of your undercarriage, and dip those tenders into a puddle of dampness. And then you'll know the true meaning of the word introverted feeling. Amen. That's my little FI sermon there. Hope you enjoyed it. I know it's overly simplified, but does this make sense? TIFE equals individual thoughts, group values. TIFI equals group and thoughts, individual values. Group thoughts, individual values. Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. Supernova. It seems to be right on the money. TE looks about it by looking at consensus and general perceptions and stuff, and because FI provides it the directionality. Do we get a freestyle live Eric rap now? Well, it wasn't really a freestyle rap. It was more like a freestyle FI sermon. Run with your life while you still can. Oh, face supreme. Is this what a household Hitler is? ESFJ is a household Hitler. Is face supreme getting some abuse right here or what? I don't agree. FI has better things to do than think about their feels all day long. Okay, well, I'm sure it does, but listen, nobody can be a real, true, authentic human being until they dip their own towelette into a little bit of moisture. Without a moist towelette, how will you ever clean your hands? Yes, you do need to discover the moisture of your heart. Correct, Julia Hagen. It seems like you've learned a lot at today's symposium. I'm sure it was well worth the $499. What did I say? Where did I say that, Shreddy? Come on, Shreddy Chandran. Don't be strong man of me. All right? I didn't say if I got nothing better to do than sit around and think about their feels all day long. Oops, perhaps I misunderstood, Supernova. Yeah, you did. You totally misunderstood. I wasn't talking about that at all. Can I also explain NI? It's magic. It's like when you say abracadabra and shit happens. NI is mostly about, yeah, I do that periodically. I do that. You better watch out. This audience is full of black women. That's if you're on a Dr. Phil stage or something, or like an Oprah stage, and you're causing FE problems. If it's an audience full of single dudes, you're just gonna get stony faced silence. But if it's an audience full of black women, you're gonna get fingers wagged. You're gonna get pitch going up over the course of the just generally wordless syllables, like that. It's a lot more interesting. So that's why I do convert sometimes. Okay, so what is NI? NI is the thing that prevents me from just going on and on and on about that shit forever, right? And come back to the topic and go, okay, I'm just, my NE's gotten away from me again. And I need to say, stop, Eric, you're doing something for a purpose here. You're not just letting your mind go free without any kind of direction or constraint. Now, it does not mean that I am particularly directionful. I don't have generally a larger map of where I'm going in these things that I keep referring back to, although there is a topic of NI being magic, and so there'll be periodic links back to it. But by and large, I'm looking at the NI frame of, come back to the chat, answer a question, don't just joke around, say something that maybe people can find useful. I guess there's a lot of different frames I'm coming back to, but the thing about this kind of conversation is, for much of it, like right now, I'm not really referencing a lot of SI experience and explaining things. In other instances, I do reference them more. If I'm talking about ISFJs, I'm going to be certainly referencing Kimberly. If I'm talking about, say, INTJs. Well, I mean, I have some experience with each of the types. I was going to say, I probably wouldn't reference my experience a lot. If I was just talking about function mechanics without really talking about a type, I probably wouldn't reference my experience a lot. It would just be referencing TISI kind of shit, What's the role of the fifth function and how does it play out? That's an important question, and I want to talk about that in a second after I eat this bite of food. a bird, you mean? So there's one I was going to answer. What one was it? Let's see. Oh yeah, how does the role of fifth function? How does it play out? The fifth function in your stack is the one that you ignore. What's wrong with that? There's nothing. You got more. And so because your fifth function is the thing that you do automatically when you just be you all the time, going around saying, hey, I validate you and everybody else against my fifth function. So for me, see, you better validate against the truth. Otherwise, I'll name you Ruth and throw you out the window into a phone booth. Okay? Fifth function is ignoring. And for me, it's the function that I'm most attracted to. So it's like I feel I'm most accomplished when I attain NI in my media, when I attain NI in a song or something, which means I'm not just writing the song like NI, although certainly I want to do that. I want it to be an earworm, but I'm also recognizing the need to incorporate everything just so. Anything that's a little bit off is going to diminish from it. And you've got a couple of things that are a little bit off, all of a sudden it starts to sound sloppy, and that becomes its identity. If you want a song or a track to attain its identity as best it can, and if it does attain its full identity, then at that point it achieves synergy. So I seek NI in most things I do. TI has a different kind of truth validation than NI that can be cooperative with it, but don't necessarily have to be. What you can see in an INTP is somebody who's using TI to break apart NI holes all the time because they countervalue the NI and they're and yada yada yada. But how does one song make him the best? I mean, I like Will Smith. I don't think he's the best, but I do like him. By Freddie Chandran. How about the role of the eighth function? The seventh function is one blind spot, and the eighth function less suppressed. Yeah, it's what I call your sub-instrumental tool function or your unconscious. It's your balanced function. So you use your eighth function exactly appropriately. It's the only function you do use exactly appropriately. And that means for me, I am able to get shit done. I do some things, but I'm not married to doing. So I'm able to play plenty too. It always serves my nature as a function really ought to inherently. And it never serves its own interests. In addition, it's going to be a little bit insecure because I'm going to see like an SE DOM more successfully or holistically using SE, but not really using it in a balanced way like I do. And I'm going to sort of instinctually understand that I'm using it properly and they're overusing it. So this is true for everybody with their 8th slot function. If your 8th slot function is, let's say, FI, you're going to have a balanced usage of it. It's going to be there to serve your nature, your TI, and it won't be there when you don't need it, and you won't misuse it. So in SE DOM, they might misuse SE. They might be too forceful with somebody. Granted, SE is not force, but let's say they might take too much action that impacts the world concretely in ways that end up being harmful. But I probably won't do that because I'm SE 8th. On the other hand, an NE-DOM like me may use ideation too much in contexts where it's not appropriate, that end up just confusing people and muddying things that need to be clarified. And an SE DOM's not going to do that. So they've got the equivalent balanced use of NE. I'm not sure what you mean by NI and FE. What are they? What's your definition of them? Well, NI is a knowledge function, which is to say it is knowing from a universal perspective as opposed to an experiential perspective, as SI takes impressions of experiences and keeps track of them. NI takes lessons from experiences and keeps track of them. By saying it's a knowing function, what I mean specifically is if we were to operationalize that definition, it is a receive function. Information is received as already processed within the self, either because it's a memory or it's a lesson that one understands, quote unquote, as opposed to a deliberative function, which processes that information, or an action function, which takes action of some kind, or an interface function, which does a combination of things. Is not knowing how much time has passed or how much time a certain activity will take a general SJ trait, or specifically something an NI polar struggle with? No. It has to do with TE. How much time something will take. Those are two different things. How much time has passed has to do with intuition or sensor. So intuitives tend to get lost in their heads about the passage of time as it's occurring. How much time a certain activity will take is a TE thing. And that's something that a TE polar person has a great deal of trouble accounting for because they don't understand how long things are going to take. NI polar does not necessarily struggle with that at all. If they're a TE, don't look an ESTJ, they will have no problem understanding how long things are going to take. They'll have a much better sense even than an ENTP for sure. But and they probably won't have any problem knowing how much time has passed either because they got SI in the mix. So that's my answer to that. I think people worry the least about seventh functions is the blind spot. I agree with you. I don't really worry about FI. I find myself having a pleasant relationship with it by and large. I don't need it. I don't use it for anything, so it's just when I do use it, it's because it needs to be felt or whatever. And I don't worry about any complications beyond that. Can you give me an example of an ESFJ in trouble because he doesn't learn from universals? Yes, Kimberly's brother Ruben is an example of an ESFJ in trouble because he doesn't learn from universals. He always thinks he always thought when he was here that he would just sort of be able to interface his way along at all points. When he wasn't getting it, I was telling him, you need to do this by this date, and he wasn't doing it, or just think he'd sort of like, whatever. He didn't get the NI of it, and eventually they're like, boot. My actual favorite rapper is probably like one of the members of the Wu-Tang Clan. I like the one who raps about scientific stuff. Dr. Science Rap, they call him. Morning sunshine, good noon. It is currently 8:25 in the a.m. here in Southern California. Hello, Bruce Wayne. I continue to mean to talk to you. I'm going to wrap this thing up within the next 12 minutes. Can we talk thereafter? Because I've been meaning to talk to you. Can you go to appear.in /autonomy in 12 minutes? And then I can lock that room, I think. If I can't, then we'll go to one of the rooms I can lock. I don't remember if I can lock it or not. It seems to me like sensors often are misunderstood by all the intuitives of the MBTI community. I don't think they're necessarily. It's here. I'll put it here. I don't know if they're misunderstood. I do think that the sensors are tended to be described through an intuitive lens. That's why SE is seen as power or force, because from an intuitive perspective, it is. David Sanderson says, I'm a sensor. Really? Which kind of sensor am I? You did get me. Oh. I think intuitives understand sensors more than sensors understand intuitives. They just understand things differently. It's like Kimberly understands me more than I understand myself in some ways. I understand her more than she understands herself in some ways. It's just a matter of the fact that intuitives consistently prioritize this abstract understanding as being somehow a better understanding, smarter understanding, more complete understanding, or whatever. I tend to agree with that, but that's just because I'm an intuitive, It's like our function biases run deep. The reason we're all here and there aren't a bunch of ISFPs here and there aren't a bunch of ESFPs here and there aren't a bunch of even ESTPs here. There are some, but one popular thing that I hear in comments and shit is that I'm an ESTP. The reason I hear this is because C.S. Joseph has said it on a few occasions. He's tried to spread the message that I'm an ESTP. And I typically ask the commenter who says that, okay, well, why do you think I'm an ESTP? And this most recent one said, well, because you're always doing things like collapsing shit down to the best. You're using your NI all the time. So, for example, this was a comment on the live stream where it said, any worse is the worst tool function. Well, he's right that that's an example of NI, but it's obviously not the case that comprises the majority of what I'm doing. I'm trying to be more NI in my titles. I want to get people to watch the videos. I want to get viewers and stuff. So I'm trying to implement more NI. If you go back to the beginning of the channel, I would title shit like "Teacups are made out of Kevlar" because it was a funny line I thought from the video. It's not about that at all. It was like the most.
If you continued on the way you were when I found you, it would have been a shit show by now.
Yeah. What do you think about something like the gardener intelligence? I don't know what the gardener intelligence is. Is that like knowing when to plant and when to harvest? You seem an NI user. I can't deny it. NI suspicious. Sounds like NI ignoring to me. Knowing two ways: SI recognition by impression, NI precognition by intuition. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, the thing is, what I would say is, and I got this term from my INFJ friend, although he wasn't using it in relation to cognitive functions at all, but I would call NI pre-creator, the pre-creational function. Yeah. In certain MBTI forms, I see intuitives oversimplifying the XSXX personalities, not bothering to understand them in depth. Makes sense, but I think it leads to untrue stereotypes. Well, I mean, it's just a matter of concretization versus abstraction and where we value them. What is the tool function? Function number 2. It's the one that's after function number 1. It's like 1, 2, then 3, and only after that 4. On the backside, we then go to 5, 6, 7, and 8. Eric is so NE. It's so hard to miss that. Oh, that thing. You're talking about the multiple intelligences thing. I think that those are legitimate areas of distinction. I do agree with the fact that they seem to incorporate most of the kinds of intelligences that people can have successfully. And the fact that they're 8, I don't think he had that link to cognitive functions at all, but that makes, some good sense there. If you would say musical rhythmic is probably an NI thing. I think it's NISE, which is why my rhythm came so late. I got like songwriting ideas before I got steady rhythm or anything like that. Visual spatial, that would be more SENI. Verbal linguistic, NESI. Logical mathematical. See, this is where it's a problem, right? It should be verbal linguistic, logical mathematical is all the same thing. Then there's like TE would be solvency, problem solving, and effectiveness and efficiency, or engaging with systems like that. I have found SE to be more about acting in the sensory world. SE polar, I find I'm constantly achieving goals and following through on action. It's just that the action have to do with NE. Okay, well, I think my example of INTPs, SE polar, manifesting in them having 9 good jokes for every one they say that don't make it out is a good example of SE polar. Bruce Wayne, you take Adderall, don't you, Eric? That usually makes any users quite centered and focused. I do take Adderall, and it's it has varying effects on me. I can be maximally productive and do my very best work on Adderall, but it's also the case that those stretches of time are rare. It's at the beginning of a cycle after I've had a sleepy week and I've rebuilt up the pool of dopamine that I can reuptake inhibit. Let's see. Eric of the hosted, what type would find reaction YouTube videos good? FE types probably, but FI types, I mean, any type maybe would. In general, I think FE types get a kick out of seeing other people's emotional displays. I've used this example before. There's this one video of my old band practicing, where the camera's mostly on the drummer during the video. And when we got to the end of this one song where he drops out and just sort of taps like this, and I go, rapping our kids, rapping our. And then when he kicks back in or drops back in, you can just see like the sheer joy on his face, and is really enjoying the whole thing. And I watched just that little like section, watching his face several times before. I was like, what am I doing? Oh my God, I'm effie tweaking out on this. I don't know anything about Personality Hacker, really. I don't have any opinion about it. I'd have to look into it. So I nailed all the TI questions, but also came to the idea of telling about the bully's reason for being a dick quite fast. What does it tell about my function stack? Well, it depends how and why you nailed all the TI questions. So INFP and INFJ will both probably get the TI questions right. It's a matter of how quickly, how easily, how...
Don't roll your ears. They're going to stay like that forever.
Okay. Hurt people hurt people. That's a great saying. I've never heard it before, Joey Shabbat, but that's a good one. Does bad grammar indicate any? No, bad grammar indicates probably not any TI. So maybe ENFP would have bad grammar, but they maybe don't. The worst grammar is ESFP. They have terrible grammar. Also, do you debate still? Yeah, I'll debate anybody, anytime, about anything. You want to invite a friend to destroy my arguments? Which of my arguments are you going? What's the resolution? Am I affirming? Which elements of my arguments am I affirming? And yada yada yada. Or we could utilize the way DSP views self-typing to declare Eric to be an underdeveloped ISFJ. He could be. Could demonstrative NI relate to telling others what path they should follow to reach a certain goal, but not following one's own advice due to SE polar, or is that something different? Yes, that's very demonstrative NI. INTPs or INFPs would like to be consultants, where they use NI to either break apart the existing problem and say no, or to sort of, I guess, resolve the matter for the other person on a feelings basis or something, but they don't want to apply it to themselves. NI is magic only in the sense that it incorporates synergy. So synergy being when the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Now, there's something inherently magical about that, because the parts should add up to the sum. Oh, it's true though. Hurt people, and it's worth remembering. It's like, you cleared them all in a couple of minutes with a bit of initial confusion. I don't know if it's pretty much. I'd have to see you in action. I can't type somebody from like that. Okay, so I'm gonna call it quits on this live stream here. I'm gonna go talk to Bruce Wayne.
No, he's gonna go talk to Kimberly for 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go briefly say, chill here for a sec, Bruce Wayne, and then I'm gonna talk to Bruce Wayne for. Bye. Thanks. Don't forget to play cheese, etc., etc.